will always have this wonderful richness. The analog color, it has the superior resolution.
Hey guys, it's Charlie, and if you're using a mirrorless camera to shoot all of your videos, you probably ran into the same problem as me, which is that clinical sharpness that mirrorless cameras bring due to the digital sensor. And with that comes a lot of digital problems, such as, like I said, clinical sharpness, noisy shadows. So when shooting with this camera, there are times where I desire that film look due to the not only the nostalgia, but the way film analog renders colors and grain. I really like the imperfections of film, and there's a reason why some of the biggest Hollywood directors, such as Christopher Nolan, you got Wes Anderson, Steven Spielberg, they use film for a reason. If you take Christopher Nolan as an example, and he shot Oppenheimer in digital, Oppenheimer, anyway, if he shot that on digital, I guarantee you it would feel different. It just wouldn't feel the same. But no, he chose to use IMAX 70mm film analog for a reason, because of its characteristics, the way it renders color, the way highlights roll off. So I'm going to edit some log footage in Final Cut Pro. You can use any editing software, of course, and I have included in the description some plugins that are optional. You don't need them, but they will help the look. All right, I'm in Final Cut Pro and I have all my clips here, and we're going to kind of dive into what makes these more filmic, if you will. And let's just stop on this one real quick and I'll go over it. So first off, if you look at all of my corrections, you're going to see my conversion LUT, which is really important for converting log to Rec 709. You first need to do that. And for me, I like to make my exposure adjustments before adding any looks, just because I find that the colors are they roll off nicer. The contrast is a lot more even, all that stuff. But there's a lot more technical jargon that I can get into with that. But for the exposure adjustment, you can see it just popping out the highlights a little bit. And then for the color adjustment, you can see that it's adding contrast, and we're going to get into that. The color curves, it's kind of like additional contrast, if you will. And then we have the look, which is just my LUT. You can add any LUT you want, obviously, but I use this one called Vlog Filmic 17. I really like it. It adds kind of like an orange and teal look to your video. And then we have the highlight, white balance correction, and then we have the red halation, which is actually a free plugin from a creator. I found this literally last week. I'll link that in the description. And then we have the film grain, of course, which you can adjust to taste. And a fun thing that you can do is you can even download film grain overlays. So like, for example, if you want your film grain to look like 16mm, you can add that above your clip and just change the blend mode. It's really cool, and we might even do that today. So that's the workflow, and you know what? We'll start with this clip because we're already on it. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to the effects, which is at the bottom right of Final Cut Pro. You just click this little menu right here, and then we're going to type in custom LUT, and we're going to drag that onto our clip. You can also drag it onto an adjustment layer. It's really up to you. But what I'm going to do is on the top right where my effects are, I'm just going to name this conversion LUT. So everything is nicely named. And then I'm going to go to my Lumix conversion LUTs and use the S52 neutral Vlog conversion. As soon as you add that conversion LUT, you're basically taking your log footage, converting it to Rec 709, and it's going to change your waveform as well. So if we toggle that off, you're going to see that it's much more central with the entire image. And then if you turn it back on, you're going to see those levels basically stretch, which is adding, contrast, all that stuff. But now let's go ahead and add another adjustment. And this one is going to be we could add wheels, we can add curves, we can add, color adjustments, really whatever you feel comfortable using. For me, I like using a color board. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a color board. And then from here, we want to make sure it is under our conversion LUT, because we don't want to color grade above it since we first converted our footage, obviously. So from here, we can name this exposure adjustment, whatever you want, it doesn't matter. And what we're going to do is go over to exposure, and we're just going to drag the shadows down a little bit. And then we're going to drag the highlights up a little bit. And then we can even add some contrast by playing with the middle tone here, the midtones. You don't have to drag the shadows to 0, by the way. You can honestly keep them up a little bit higher, so there's a little bit more fade in your image, if you will, which kind of mimics a, maybe like a pro mist filter or something like that. It gives your shadows a little bit of a softer roll off. But for me, I like to keep them pretty crunchy, so I'm going to bring them down to like almost 0, not quite touching 0. And that's pretty good for me. Now I'm going to go to my saturation and just raise it just a little bit. And we can even rename this layer saturation too. So we could do exposure plus sat adjustment. There you go. Now, if I was working with skin tones, I would use a vector scope and create another layer for the skin tones, but we're not working with skin tones, so we don't have to worry about that. Unless your colors look completely off, you can add a white balance adjustment, but I actually like the way the white balance is set here, so I'm gonna keep it. You have to know what your scene looks like, so if the white balance looks completely different than the way you shot it, unless you're going for that, then I would definitely add a white balance adjustment. And the way you would do that is you could do it a few different ways. You can add a color wheel. You can also add a hue and saturation curve adjustment. So for example, if let's say this is my skin tone, this, red color, I can just take my eyedropper, eyedrop that red, and then I can change it this way. But I'm not going to do that. There's no point. Next, I'm going to add another custom LUT, and this is going to be my look. So let's name this style/look. And then I'm just going to select my LUT that I love to use all the time, which is the Vlog Filmic 17. And I tend to not put it at 100 just because I feel like it sometimes can come on strong. It mutes the highlights a lot too. So normally I set it to like 90 to 95. So that's our look applied. And before we even add the look, another optional thing we could do is add something called color adjustments. And this is a really good adjustment for contrast. So let's go ahead and rename this contrast. And actually we can even, bring that above style and look. So let's toggle look on. And here's where we could do some further adjustments. So let's say you want the brightness to be adjusted a little bit. You can do that here. And if you want the highlights to be a little punchier, you can do that as well, but just be careful not to go too crazy. We can change the black point if we want to add a little bit more fade. I don't really want to do that, so I'm going to keep it. The shadows we can bring up just a little bit if we feel like it, which I don't actually think it's necessary for this image, so I'm not going to do that. And then the black point can stay the same. This is also a really great way to adjust white balance. If you feel like it, you can add saturation with this one as well. But I don't really use it for that. I use it mainly for contrast and adjusting the shadows and black point. So I'm just going to add a little bit of contrast here. And as you can see, it's bringing our shadows in a very dangerous spot because we don't want them to clip past 0. So I'm just going to add a little bit of contrast. About 18 is fine. Or yeah, 18, 19 is okay. And that's pretty much it. So I'm going to keep it at that. And then let's go ahead and go back to our style and look and then toggle that off. You can see kind of what we did there, right? So from here, what we're going to do is add our bloom. And a lot of people don't know this, but there is actually something in Final Cut Pro that adds bloom, and it has the weirdest name. It's called Romance. So we're going to go back to our effects and type in Romance. And I think it's called Romance. Let me see. Yeah, oh, Romantic. I'm sorry, not Romance. But anyway, close enough. We're just going to click and drag that on our clip, and you're going to see immediately those highlights are going to bloom. It's actually crazy how cool this is. And we can actually change the roll off, if you will. So you could do round drop off. We could do elliptical blend. We could do round blend. I like round blend, so I'm going to keep it at that. And we're just going to drag it down a little bit. I feel like it's a little too crazy. So I'm going to bring it to about maybe 18, and we could toggle that on and off. From there, we can add our halation. We should actually probably even do it before the bloom technically, but you can play with the way you stack your layers, really up to you. I'm just going to type in red, and then there's a plugin called Red Halation. Again, this is free, so you don't have to use it, but in my opinion, it really adds to the look. So optional, but I would definitely check it out. So now we could take the blur amount down on this. I don't play with a lot of these settings, but you can. I'm just going to really make it subtle. I love the way this looks. So I'm going to keep it at about 17 to 18, and that looks pretty good. Now we're going to add the film grain. So I'm just going to go back to my effects and type in film grain, add that to it, and we want to change the film grain. So let's go back here. Let's toggle these menus, or hide them, I should say. And then on the film grain, we're going to keep it at realistic, not iMovie, because iMovie looks like, to be honest with you, shit. And you know what? I'm going to show you guys how you can add your own grain if you want to download some stock grain. So let's go to my files real quick. I downloaded some of this film grain, and I'm just going to drag this on top to show you the difference between the built-in grain that Final Cut has to offer and this overlay. So I could just change the duration of this overlay by dragging the end to the edge of our clip here, and it's going to snap into place. And then we could change the blend mode of this clip to screen. Actually, not screen. I'm sorry, overlay. And there you go. So we could toggle off this grain for now. Let's hide our waveform and let's play this back. Actually, right here, there we go. And you can see the grain's fairly large, and that's because it's 16 millimeter grain. You can even do 8 millimeter grain. if you want to replicate maybe like a Super 8 look. But with this one, you know, I don't know if it's necessary for this clip. So let's go ahead and try the built-in grain from Final Cut Pro. That's the film look pretty much, guys. It's really simple. And you know, the cool thing about this is I can even copy this over to my other clip. Let's toggle this on. I just copied it. I'm just going to paste it now. And you can see that it works right away. It's really that easy. And you know, we can add that grain on top if we feel like it. That's how I do it, guys. It's really that simple. I try not to complicate everything. I try to make it as streamlined as possible because, you know, when I'm pumping out YouTube videos, I just want to apply that look over my footage and get it done really quick and make minor adjustments, whether that's to skin tones or highlights, midtones, and shadows. One thing that you can do is save this as a preset. So in Final Cut Pro, if you go to your movie icon here, and if you look at the bottom, you're going to see Save Effects Preset. You just click on that. You can add it wherever you want and name it. And that's exactly what I do. So I have it at all times. And there's one more thing that you can add to your physical lens to make your highlights bloom naturally without having to do it in post. Let me show you. So this filter on my 50mm lens is called the Cine Bloom 10%, okay? Actually, this is the 5%. So let me take it off and show you guys what this does. So pretty much when you add it to the front of your lens, or yeah, your lens, this will basically bloom highlights. It will take away some of the clinical sharpness that we've been talking about and also bloom highlights and give them a softer roll off. So let's go ahead and put this in the front right here, and you can kind of see already what it's doing. And this is only a 5% variant. All right, so this is the 10%. This one's pretty crazy. So if you pay attention to those highlights, you can already see what they're doing. Look at that. Huge difference, right? I'll do half and half. So yeah, 10%. So I have 5%, 10%. Now, one of the most popular filters that I've seen a lot of content creators use is the Tiffen Black Pro Mist 1.4 version. And I have it right here, but I don't think it's in the right size. Look, guys, I know this video is way different than what you're used to on this channel. I make a lot of graphic design / merch design videos, but I made a separate channel for my merch design content, which is Merch Design Academy. And if you're new here and this is your first time, you know, watching me, then you probably don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but that's totally okay. My name's Charlie Pangus, and I love creating content, basically. So if you're into that too, maybe we have a lot in common. Consider subscribing, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.
Film will always have this wonderful richness, the analog color, it has the superior resolution, and when